Travis Wayne Goodzell. So there were 3 Mormons so far who chose to disrespect me, chose to disrespect my religion, and they're Mormons. Mormons who disrespect my religion by putting a thumbs down on my videos. When I inform you guys in the beginning, you aren't going to believe me. This is not your religion, so leave me alone, stay away, obey President Nelson, and they didn't even do that. They don't even obey their own prophet. What is my religion? Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. In the learning of the Jews. Mormons cannot give religious freedom. They can't do it because it means they're false. It's that simple. Not complicated. So let me take you back into history. There's what's known as the Dark Ages. This occurred after the creation of Christianity. Roman Emperor Constantine in 325 CE forced the bishops to gather and give up their belief systems. They were no longer allowed to have the beliefs that they were preaching in their congregations. They now had to become one. They were all different. Not a single one of them were the same. They all had different versions of Jewish revelation for the Christ of the latter days. After the learning of the Jews, and they were told, nope, none of yours is correct. And all their Christs, wrong. And Constantine created a new word to describe the nature and character of their brand new Christ, whom they named Jesus, Homoousion, which by definition, and it's in the creed, means not real. So they give the created word that Constantine had to create because nobody could agree, and then described it as not real. That is the definition. The Christian Jesus is, by definition, in the first creed of Christianity, not real. And as a result, all of the Jewish scriptures were replaced with Christian beer goggles. Everything was now reinterpreted under the Christian lens. And they were made literal history, and now the Jews were guilty of murdering the Jesus Christ of Christians. That's what's called an anachronism. And now the Christians were weaponized against the Jews to hate the Jews for having murdered their Christ, when actually the Jewish scriptures, which were culturally appropriated by Christians, were prophecies of the future Christ for the latter days. And so it would be a religion in the latter days who would assassinate their Christ. And then another Christ would have to rise up to restore. But if you have Christian goggles, you don't see it that way, because you don't know the learning of the Jews. And with that, There is a whole bunch of knowledge that was lost. The history of the world, lost. Because now the Bible was used to replace history. They're not literal history. But Christianity turned it into literal history. And so history was being rewritten. The scriptures, only selected scriptures were chosen for a canon of scripture. All the other prophecies were rejected because they didn't fit the literal history narrative. They were too prophetic in nature and revealed sins that they didn't want come out. Like the Virgin Mary. And all prophecies are now gone. None of it is known because they're now encoded in Christianity. And so the learning of the Jews is getting erased. And thus the identity of who the Christ is also getting erased. So Joseph Smith tells us exactly this, and what the problems that have arisen from the Dark Ages, because science now has to be replaced with faith in an unreal deity. Now, magic is the focus of the day, but if you're not of the church, your magic is evil. The only one true magic is of the true church. Alright. So we're on Joseph Smith history here. Verse 8. During this time of great excitement, my mind was called up to serious reflection and great uneasiness. And blah, 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 blah. In process of time, my mind became somewhat partial to the Methodist sect because of my wife Emma and her family religion that I'm refusing to put in here because this is not literal history. And I felt some desire to be united with them. But so great were the confusion and strife among the different denominations that it was impossible for a person as young as I was, and so unacquainted with men and things, to come to any certain conclusion who was right and who was wrong. My mind at times was greatly excited. The cry and tumult were so great and incessant. The Presbyterians were most decided against the Baptists and Methodists, and used all the powers of both reason and sophistry to prove their errors, or at least to make people think they were in error. On the other hand, the Baptists and Methodists in turn were equally zealous in endeavoring to establish their own tenets and disprove all others. You familiar with the news lately? Methodists, endeavoring to establish their own tenets that Jesus now accepts LGBTQ, it caused a massive division. They're now split. They have fallen. Because there are some who say Jesus accepts LGBTQ, and then there are those who say Jesus doesn't. So which is it? They can't both be right. And then I'm sure you heard about Pence's Christianity, versus Buttigieg Christianity. And Pence said, my Christian Jesus does not accept LGBTQ. And Buttigieg's Christianity says that his Jesus accepts LGBTQ. And then you have the debate over women. Are women in the image of deity? Are they the seed of deity? Can they be independent, free will agents? Or must they be sex slaves to their husbands? Well, there's a branch of Christianity that says, no, Jesus does not want you to be free agents. You must be sex slaves. And so they're now taking away your rights to Roe v. Wade. They are working on taking away your rights to abortion pills. And yeah, they're going to take away your babies and give them away to good Christian families that disapprove of LGBTQ, because Jesus does. And then you'll be slut-shamed for having a baby out of wedlock, trying to murder the baby. See where this is going? Dark Ages, Spanish Inquisition, Handmaid's Tale, 1984, Krypton. Awesome series. Sucks that they stopped it after 2 seasons. That was lame. There was an incident in Pittsburgh that made the news, and so people were going to come back to Krypton after the news coverage, but because it was the season finale, they thought that the numbers were too low. Everything's online now. People can come and watch it whenever they want. It's not back in my day where it's on between a certain time at night, and if you miss it, you have to wait for the reruns in the summer. So lame. Krypton was awesome. That's my family crest, the House of L. But I do understand there's a new Superman movie coming out. I hope we live long enough to see it on DVD. Creed 3. Dear God. They're not coming out with a single DVD of it. You have to buy the Blu-ray DVD combo or the Creeds 1, 2, and 3 combo to get it on DVD. So lame. Rocky, is that you? Are you involved in this? Come on. The Gang of Tulsa or whatever series he's now in. He's also coming out with a new cliffhanger, apparently. With sequel. Alright. So in the midst of this war of words and tumult of opinions, I often said to myself, what is to be done? Who of all these parties are right? Or are they all wrong together? And then he contradicts himself later on. He does. It never occurred to me that they were all wrong altogether. Oops. And so then he's reading the Bible. And he gets an interpretation. The literal interpretation. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. So he asked God. No other Christian interpretation had that. And this is not the focus. I see Mormons focus on this. I see Mormon apologists who want to focus on, oh, this was the first time he prayed vocally. Oh, we found proof. His family, the father, led the prayers. Oh my God. Talk about your rabbit holes. Which, that's what a rabbit hole means. I have a new follower who used rabbit hole on me. I don't take you down on rabbit holes. They do have meaning. But that's what rabbit hole means, is it takes you away from the topic at hand. And I don't take away from the topic at hand. I expand on the topic. Big difference. But yes, there is some confusion because I've been talking about honey bunny, barrel bunnies, and what was the other one that Yellowstone used for bunnies? I can't remember, but yeah, never mind. And so, yeah, he asked God. So, I saw a pillar of light exactly over my head, above the brightness of the sun. Anybody familiar with Egyptian? Oh, right, nobody. That's Emmanuel. Amen. El, the God, Amen. Adam, Andai, Amen. This is our Christ. And so he says, this is my son of Mary, hear him. Oh, right, you don't know Egyptian. Beloved is Mary in Egyptian. That's why she's named Mary in those Gospels that were culturally appropriated by Christians. For at this time it had never entered into my heart that all were wrong. Hilarious. And I was answered that I must join none of them. Instead, he wants him to create his own Christianity and create his own Jesus. And merge it with reality. He's real, but he's also not real. And this will be new. Now do you see where I went with that? And all of their Apollo creeds. Do you see how I creed? It's going to be an awesome movie. I haven't even seen it yet. I'm just that prophetic. For they were all wrong. And the personage, I thought it was Jesus, who addressed me, said that all of their creeds were an abomination. And what was the very first creed that I just went over with you? Yeah, the creation of Jesus as the Christ, with the start of Christianity, that then replaced the Jews, replaced their religion, replaced the interpretation of their scripture, and replaced their Christ, and sent the world into the Dark Ages. So, who is the Mormon Christ? You know exactly who. While I was thus in the act of calling upon God, here we go, I discovered a light appearing in my room, which continued to increase until the room was lighter than at noonday. There's that Egyptian deity again. When immediately the personage appeared at my bedside, standing in the air, and his feet did not touch the floor. Not real. It's a vision. Joseph Smith says it's a vision. And so he's naked, so that he can see that he's male. A human male. That's the point of that. It's not for porn purposes. Joseph is not trying to write a harlequin romance. His countenance was truly like Jupiter. Lightning, the symbol of Jupiter, which is the man-child that John in Revelation chapter 12 refers to. You got the sun, the moon, Virgo, the constellation, Leo, and then Joseph Smith reminds us that Ophiuchus, which Hercules and Ophiuchus, those two meteor showers just appeared today. Wonder what happened when the Aries meteor showers happened on Mother's Day. What happened to the church when that happened? 60 minutes, 60 minutes, 60 minutes. So I'm very hopeful and anticipating with great excitement something for today. Wouldn't that be nice? But we'll see. And so he said that his name was Malachi. Right, you don't even know Hebrew. Malachi, translated as messenger, says that he's a messenger sent from the presence of Emmanuel, as he is Emmanuel. Jupiter is the Roman version of the Egyptian Emmanuel, Amen. But then he says his name is Nephi. All right, Joseph Smith is wrong. We have to correct the founding prophet of Mormonism, because he's wrong. He didn't know that the name was actually Moroni. Even though the Joseph Smith papers reveals that Joseph Smith was wrong, the church is sticking to Moroni. Which church? Who's the Christ of this church again? Because it certainly wasn't the Christ of Joseph Smith. And guess what? Next year is the millennium. But first, we're told about Egyptian gold plates. Oh, the Knights Templar, the Holy Grail of the bloodline of King David to restore the throne of King David. The Christ of the Jews. Huh. You see all the information that you're missing because you don't know real church history? That Joseph Smith Sr. was a York Rites Master Mason? And that he was working on a book with William Morgan in Canandaigua, New York, where he was the Master Mason, and an enemy found out. And so it was the duty of the Master Mason, Joseph Smith Sr., to help him escape the country and take on the responsibility of finishing the book, to warn America of this threat. See how much knowledge Mormons are missing out on? Because they turn this literal. Exactly what Constantine did, which Joseph Smith calls an abomination. That church, for doing that abomination, creating an unreal Christ, which is an abomination, forming a church which is most great and abominable. And Mormons can't make the connection because their Jesus is part human. God. So yeah, Old Testament prophecies. Malachi, messenger, and adds, for they that come shall burn them. The prophets of this church have refused to remind you that this is the bicentennial year of this second vision. Nelson came out in October 2019 to announce 2020 was going to be the bicentennial year of the first vision. And that he had big plans. And then it was ruined, and all he could do was a Saturday evening conference session for April conference. Because he had other plans that he already prepared for. But it didn't stop Mormons from saying, he prophesied of it, he prophesied of it. No, Joseph did. The Bible did, which means the Jews did, which means the Egyptians did. Nelson didn't. He didn't warn any of you. He didn't come out and specifically tell you and warn you of it by saying it's going to be a conference you won't forget. That doesn't mean he prophesied of it. Dear God, Mormons were humiliated. So, here's the Christ. He quoted also the 3rd chapter of Acts. He's quoting about the latter days, prophecies of the latter days. And he says that that prophet is Christ. So who's the prophet? So let's go to Acts, right? Because you all study your scriptures, right? For Moses truly said unto the fathers, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me. Moses. A man like Moses, who is to be raised up in the latter days. So it's not Jesus, is it? But, 22a? Yeah. It refers to the prophecies, and they don't do it here. Except in verse 24a. Foretold of these days. T.G. Jesus Christ prophecies about. I tried to get it fixed. They wouldn't let me. And so yes, Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19, that's the Jewish Christ. He's human. And he's for the latter days. And we know the latter days because John in Revelation gives them to us. By using signs in the heavens, he's telling us the date. And it's not the Roman period time. It's the latter days. And so yes, you'll still see Jesus, but that's not the interpretation. It is not Constantine's Christianity, nor is it Nelson's Christianity. It's the learning of the Jews, which means Joshua which means Yah of salvation. And then you've got to go to Jeremiah 23, as he's a descendant of David, and he saves the Jews and the house of Israel. But Joseph Smith, to close it all up, as those of you who are following me know exactly the passage that I'm referring to. And this shows you how darkened the minds of Mormons have become by being born and raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They are looking for Jesus to come. They keep telling Christians they're the same. We're one of you. We're Christian too. We believe in Jesus too. No, you don't. You believe in another Jesus. This is Joseph Smith told you that it's all wrong. And yet here you are trying to say you're the same. You're just another Christian church, which is all wrong. The minds of Mormons have already become darkened. And Mormons are refusing the light and knowledge promised to them because they're not hearkening to the scriptures, the Word of God. And they're not hearkening to their Christ because they don't know Him. And Joseph Smith warned you. Did you just disconnect my drive? Security system needs me. Better not have ruined it. That if you don't hearken, you're going to be utterly destroyed. Just to cut it short, because there's some Greek knowledge from Acts that's required, and then to figure it out from the context in which he wrote, because he's trying to make you study. And so talking about the latter days, the redemption of Zion, 3rd Nephi chapter 11, because remember the Book of Mormon, learning of the Jews, not literal history. It's a prophecy of the latter days. So 3rd Nephi chapter 11, it's the latter days. It's not Jesus. See, if you were a Mormon, you would know that Jesus is a symbol for Emmanuel. And thus he makes Nephi the Christ of the Nephites. And then is told, where are the records of the name of God, which is Emmanuel? And so the story of Samuel the Lamanite is telling Mormons that in the latter days, Emmanuel, their Christ, will start his ministry in Salt Lake City, Utah. The whole valley, that's where he will be. Because Samuel the Lamanite didn't live in Zarahemla. They go out of their way to inform us. He's not of the capital. He's not of Utah. He moves to Utah and then starts his ministry in Utah to warn Mormons to come out of the great and abominable church. Therefore, I will raise up in verse 16. There it is. The man like Moses unto Mormons, my people. Mormons are the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Jews, the house of Israel, and depending on which other cultural religion Could be the Romans, could be the Greeks, Babylonians, Egyptians. Who shall lead them like as Moses led the children of Israel? For Mormons are the children of Israel, and Mormons are the seed of Abraham, and Mormons must needs be led out of bondage of the great and abominable church by power and with a stretched out arm. Even so shall the redemption of Zion be, unless Mormons refuse to hearken, unless Mormons refuse to study their scriptures, unless Mormons refuse to stop worshiping a false idol god and the false prophets of the great and abominable church. And so then he refers to the parable of the vineyard in section 101, starting in verse 43. 19 July 1840. You will only find it in the Joseph Smith papers. Also refers to that parable and expands upon it. Reveals who the great and abominable church leader is. Calls him Judas. But again, as a Mormon, all of this light and knowledge is gone from you. You know none of it. And instead of humbling yourself and searching the scriptures, you instead are weaponized to attack anybody who points out, hey, 60 Minutes says you guys are a fraud. No, we're not. I'm going to beat you up because we're not. We're Christians, so I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to murder you because I'm Christian. See the Mormon girl who murdered her husband by poisoning him and then wrote a book about it, about how she got over him with the grief she had, and is now arrested for murder. See, why is she being arrested? The church isn't being arrested for their murders using poison. The government isn't arresting themselves for using poison to murder us. The shelter that was paid for by the government and the church to poison the homeless, to murder them, they're not being held accountable. So why is this one individual who's doing exactly the same thing as the shelter, the government, and the church getting arrested for murder? You didn't know that, did you? I've been doing the videos.